Thank you for tuning into this episode of UMBC's A Mic'd Up podcast. My name is Denise Cardona from the Office of Professional Programs. Today, we are joined by Melody Wright. She is a 2021 graduate of our master's program in Instructional Systems Development, and we are going to be talking about the world of ISD. We hope you enjoy this episode. Hey, Melody, it's wonderful to have you here on UMBC's Mic'd Up podcast. Thanks so much for being here with us today.
Welcome. Thank you for having me.
It's really great to have you. Now, you are a colleague, a fellow UMBC employee. Give us a little lowdown on where do you work? What do you do for UMBC?
Sure. A lot. I've actually been at UMBC for 11 years. Formerly in an academic department, but for the last coming up on a year, I have been the coordinator for workplace learning, organizational development, and wellness. I know that's like a super long title for what I do, but it's because our area kind of touches a little bit of everything on campus. So, just to give you, I guess, the lowdown on what I do, part of my role is administration of workplace learning, including, marketing, calendaring, program management. But the more fulfilling parts of my job are creating new content, facilitating portions of established, programs such as orientation and leadership cohorts. I do a lot of the analytics. So like a biannual needs assessment to develop a 2-year training plan. There's a little bit of everything in there.
Yeah, there sure is. Wow. Yes, you need like 3 pages of a Word document to list all those bullet points of what you do for UMBC's community. Oh, that's great. So you are, all right, you're in like the training and learning and development world. Mm-hmm. What drew you to that? How did you get started in that?
Well, so I'm a lifelong learner. I'm just, it's just who I am. I'm always learning something new, whether it's, formally or not. What drew me to that was, so I once took a diversion from the corporate world, and I taught preschool for 3 years. And I found that I really, really loved tapping into that teacher in me. And so this is kind of a little bit like that, where, I get joy from seeing the light bulb go on and people connecting to the content, and that aha moment where you kind of given them something that they can really use in their day-to-day life. So that's what drew me to this was,
Absolutely.
that need to, and I've had a bit of, given training, more on the job training throughout the years and different, jobs that I've had. But this completely connects me to that.
Yeah. Now you just graduated with your master's in Instructional Systems Development from our program here at UMBC. Is that correct?
Yeah, I graduated in August of 21 with that. So, I guess not quite 18 months ago, somewhere in there. Yeah.
Yeah, excellent. So I'm in the Learning and Performance Technology program there. It's the same, it's the master's program, formerly the ISD one. And I'm loving it. I'm almost done. In May, I'll be graduated. And I know, yay. I've got 2 graduate certificates right now in that while I was going through the program. And it's such a really great field because there's so much you can do with it, and it's so varied, and there are so many different roles and pathways you can take. And so when you first entered the master's program, did you have an idea that this is what you wanted to end up doing? Or did you start it with, oh, this is interesting. I wonder what I can do with this?
A little bit of both, actually. I was looking for a program, a master's program, that was going to help me in the job that I had at the time, which was, as I said, an academic department. I wanted something that kind of rounded out my skills a little more, but that also interested me enough to keep me engaged in the program. And so, to be honest, I first looked at MBA programs because my bachelor's is in business administration, strategic management, and HR minor. So I was trying to find something that fit well with that kept me engaged. And then I stumbled upon this on the UMBC website. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. This is my thing. I think this might be my thing. So I went to an information session. and talked to the graduate coordinator and the director and really asked a lot of questions. And then I left there thinking, I immediately applied to the program.
Excellent. So you went in there with your analytical hat on, which you need when you're in that the design, development, facilitator type role. You need to have that analytical mind to be able to ask the right questions. It's all about asking great questions, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. So what kinds of opportunities? Now, when you were in the program, you weren't in this role that you're in right now. So I'm assuming this is the role you got. Was it while you were in the program or after you graduated?
After I graduated. I actually applied for this role after completing my internship with Jill Wardell in this area. And it was after that internship that a position became available, and was encouraged to apply. And that led me to where I am now.
The rest is history.
Yeah, so that internship pays off.
It really does. And I know like some people in the learning and performance technology new masters name, some of them will not have to go through the internship if they choose not to. I chose to do that internship, and I did that in the fall semester this past fall. And it was, like you said, really great opportunity to gain some real world experience in a role for instructional design. So I did mine at University of UNCP, and I helped their online learning department be able to teach faculty how to teach better online through some course modules and things of that sort. And that kind of experience is really just priceless, because I don't know if you had this experience, but while you were doing your internship, did light bulbs go off and you said, my gosh, I could see myself doing this. This is what I want to do. Like, yeah, this is so cool. I don't know, like, did it do that for you?
It really did. I still have, tons of notes from my internship. The funny thing was my internship was based around starting a leadership cohort program. It was about teaching leaders how to coach. Mm-hmm. And so, it was really interesting to me. But what I really loved about it was, we're taught how to design from, a systems thinking. And so it was really formative to me to sit down with someone on a regular basis for this internship that's in the field and find how others design. It's, sometimes we're approaching the same problem from different angles or from different perspectives, because we all bring a different background to this work. So, it was really interesting to me, and definitely gave me a lot to chew on, but definitely energized me. So, it was like, okay, because I will tell you, there becomes a point, at least in my master's journey, where I would, before the pandemic, where, I had some health challenges. I'm just going to throw it out there. But, and so I was kind of thinking, why am I doing this? Why am I continuing, this education journey right now? Because I was really happy working where I was. I was really happy doing what I was. I was really good at it. And so, I was like, why am I doing this? How much is it going to benefit me? And then the pandemic happened, and I thought, I'm not commuting an hour each way anymore. Let me put that to use to finish this. And it was really those last few classes that I had that were required, that really just kind of re-energized me into this field and made me realize that this is exactly where I needed to be.
Yeah, that's so powerful. I know for myself, it was the pandemic, and I was working in marketing at UMBC. What I do is, during the pandemic, we had some information sessions that were virtual, and I would help to moderate those. And so the learning and performance technology one was one of them that I moderated. And I have been listening to Dr. Greg Williams for years, because I helped to market that program. I've been at UMBC almost 16 years now. And so I'm very familiar with the program, but I never thought of it as something for me. And then during the pandemic, I thought, I need to be challenged. And I think a lot of people felt this way. I need to do something with this time, because, we are on lockdown at the time, and who knows how long this is going to last. And so I think it gave permission to a lot of people to explore different avenues And so I said, you know what, if I'm going to just be here at home, not doing much on weekends or nights anymore or anything, let me do something valuable. And that's what I did. I ended up enrolling in the program because I wanted to learn. For me, it's not a career change because some people will be different. Like you didn't start the program with a career change in mind, possibly. You just wanted to enhance skills. It sounds like that's what your journey was at first. And well, for me, that's my journey as well. I love what I do at UMBC. And it's not that I'm trying to change, but it's for me a side hustle. I love teaching and I would love to be able to develop courses, but learn how to do it correctly. Because I started to try to put some courses out there years ago. And I had no idea what I was doing. No idea. And it showed. So I was like, a systems approach to course development, to being able to help people learn. And being in this program, the courses that we have to take, they're eye-opening. And especially if you go a step further and you do that, you do that extra, you go the extra mile with the capstone and with the projects that you are challenged and encouraged to participate in. I think it's really what you put into it is what you get out of it, like anything in life, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, in terms of what people need somebody who maybe is on the fence, sounds like a good program. I'm not sure. Is it worth it? Should I do this? Or maybe somebody who's never even heard about this program and all of a sudden they're listening to this podcast or watching it on YouTube and they're like, oh, this sounds like a really cool idea. What kinds of, in your role, what kind of knowledge, skills, and abilities are necessary for somebody to build in their repertoire of those things if they are really considering this as a field of study?
Well, I always like to say, no matter what field you're in, you need patience. And that's not untrue here as well, because sometimes things, move a little slowly. Especially when you're dealing with a client that isn't quite sure what they want. So patience. But I'm going to say communication. You need communication skills. You need objectivity. You need to be able to look at a problem objectively, because you're kind of, a lot of times you're from the outside coming in and you might have a completely different view of what's happening than what the people that are living it do. And so being able to communicate that. And then, the analytics piece, liking a puzzle, to put it in real world terms. I love a good puzzle. And so, that's a good skill to have. And then being able to coach. And I don't mean like having a coaching degree thing, but being able to kind of coach up sometimes to leadership, explaining the problem in a way that, you're coming in with a solution. They need to know that you're going to have a solution at the end of the day. You're not just bringing them problems. So I think those are probably the most important skills to have.
I love what you just said about, being a solutions-oriented person, because, and I'll admit, early in my career in marketing, you feel like, oh, I don't really know what I'm doing. And then you end up going to your director with like problems instead of solutions. And thankfully I work with a great team and I've had great directors, and they help you to see like, okay, before you come in here, let's think it through from a solution-oriented thing. Always have a solution. You have a finding, but what's your recommendation? And that has been a game changer in my life as a professional. And I think that is something that I brought forward in this program, is to be able to, it's almost required when you're doing a deep analysis of any kind of performance gap issues or trying to find the root cause of a workplace issue so that you can maybe recommend a training solution if that's appropriate. It's about finding the findings, but then, okay, what are we going to do about these? What are we going to recommend to fix those problems?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
It's like a jigsaw puzzle too, though, because you've got all these puzzles that need to fit together somehow, and they will if you take the time and really analyze them and maybe separate them by classification of what they really mean to the whole puzzle. Right. So that's another thing I took up during the pandemic was puzzle making, and really, really great brain activity, actually. I've read a lot of studies on how it really helps to keep your brain in queue.
Yeah, I do word puzzles every day. We do massive puzzles as a family. It's.
That's good. That's good. So we're on the same wavelength there, Melody. Yeah. What do you love the most about the field that you're in?
Oh, so just similar to what drew me to this was, I love sharing knowledge. It's really, whenever I find something new, because I can go down the rabbit hole of learning myself, but I love sharing what I know, and especially if I feel like it's going to help somebody else. Not to say that I like to, just go in and kind of monopolize, because I want to learn as much from people as I'm giving. But really it's the love of learning and the love of sharing what I've learned with other people. And sometimes we're on the journey together. Sometimes, I'm asked to present on things that I'm not the subject matter expert. And so, obviously I'm going to do, a little bit of, research and kind of at least have an idea of what I'm speaking about. But sometimes we're on the journey together, and figuring things out.
I like
in
that
real time as we go along.
I like that. And I think from somebody who is a learner in one of your workshops or training lessons, I would appreciate that authenticity that, okay, look, a little bit of vulnerability, if you will. Brene Brown talks about that vulnerability. Mm-hmm. People connect to that. And I think that people connect to that more than some person standing up and claiming to know everything and being an expert and perfectionist at everything. It's really nice to be able to, I think, learn from somebody who says, all right, look, I don't have all the answers, but let's work together to figure this out. I would have a lot more trust in somebody who's leading my learning if that's the role that they take, because that's the state that they start in, because then I'm like, okay, look, this is a learning journey together. And that's really what learning is. It's always a journey. We are constantly learning something new and maybe unlearning things to be able to learn things that are new. And I know I've been shocked at some of the things I've learned, and then I had to unlearn because I'm like, oh, I learned that it's probably not the best way to be approaching this. So let me try something new. And that change can be difficult for some people. And it is for me sometimes, but I think that you benefit when you are open to that transition towards change, to be able to learn new ways of doing things that you've done a certain way in the past.
Yeah, let's add authenticity to that skills list, because
Yes.
That's definitely something that will serve everyone well in this field. Yeah, so just to give you an example of that, what I just did with the with the learning with them. Sometimes we don't have the opportunity to develop or design the training completely on our own. Sometimes we get too many asks in our role than what we can completely develop. And so there are off the shelf things that we then modify to fit our audience. And so I presented a life planning session, kind of like work-life balance, but life planning, setting goals. It's the new year. And so I went right into that session. And from the very get-go, I said, look, I am not an expert on life planning. Trust me when I say, but we're going to work through this session together. And I'm going to actually do the activities with you. And then at the end, we're going to see, really how much we all learned from each other, because that's really, it's a lot of what we do is learning from each other.
Yeah.
Tapping into little bits and pieces.
Yeah. And to me, that's the most engaging thing about learning, is being able to have that curiosity about the world. And like you just did, life planning. I mean, to me, that's awesome, because then you can say, okay, I want to teach a course on life learning, life planning. And then you go and you set out and you do your research to find what you can about it to help people. And then by teaching, you're also learning.
Yeah.
That's really powerful. How did the program prepare you for the role that you're in right now? I mean, what did you learn in the program that helped you get this role?
Well, look, I'm going to say right from the beginning that it's that systems approach that the program gave me really helped me get the job that I'm in. The Instructional Systems Development program helped me in so many ways. Like I said before, we all kind of bring different perspectives and histories into our ISD work. And so not everyone has an ISD degree or a learning and performance technology degree. Sometimes it's IO Psych. Sometimes it's, there's a bunch of different, and sometimes it's just homegrown. People have learned as they went along and they don't have the formal, education for it. But they know a lot. So I guess what this program did for me was not only did it get my foot in the door for an interview because of having the ISD degree, but it helped me kind of broaden my perspective on how to develop and having that systems approach. It gave me a more in-depth analysis, structure than what I had before. Definitely gave me focus group experience because I did a bunch of that in projects that I worked on in my degree. And so, all of that kind of helped shape my perspective coming into this work. And the great thing was a lot of my skills differed from the person that I would be reporting to because, she comes at the problem and solutions from a different background. And so it kind of gave the unit a much bigger, way of looking at problems. We don't just have one tool in our tool shed. We have a whole, I don't know what, I don't know how to describe it. I've got a much bigger toolbox.
That's awesome. What was your biggest takeaway from the program?
I think one of the biggest takeaways I had was that not every problem can be solved with training. Some problems exist in performance and attitudes, and you just cannot train certain things away. But the areas where you can use learning to improve performance, everyone's going to benefit. So, that's kind of your return on investment, is getting to that at the end. But that was really my biggest takeaway. Because I think going in, I might have thought that, well, training solves everything. And it just doesn't. It does a lot.
I love it. It's so true. I completely agree. I took the class with Jeanette Monroe this past semester, the analysis class. And that is the biggest takeaway from that particular class was everything is not solved with training. You might have a lot of findings that are not training recommendations, and the recommendation is not to do training. In fact, the organization that I worked with, I uncovered 25 problems, root causes, findings, and really only 5 of them had training issues, that could be solved through training. And that was eye-opening. I mean, out of 25, 20 of them did not need a training solution. They needed just some kind of a fix with maybe a procedure or something like that. That's not a training issue. It's eye-opening.
Yeah, exactly. And look, you might be able to eventually train on how the procedure is going to change, or if it's a system problem, you'll eventually, I guess, you could rephrase the conversation about, how that system is going to change. But, sometimes it's the system in which they're operating is what's sort of broken.
Absolutely. One last question in terms of the instructional systems development aspect is, what kind of advice would you give somebody who may be thinking about entering this field? What would you say is the biggest piece of advice you would give to them?
Do it. At least take that first class. I mean, it gives you such a well-rounded view of what instructional design or learning and performance technology is. And so, it's one class. Try it, see if it's for you. After that one class, I had a pretty darn good idea that this was for me, but the other thing I would suggest is, make sure that you're rounding out your skills. Take the e-learning authoring courses, at least one. Making sure that you kind of are gathering all the tools that you can to you, and take the hard classes that make you think, because you'll absolutely need them. the ones that maybe aren't required, but, and they look a little, oh, that might be a little challenging, do it anyway. Because, that especially the analysis and writing, like one of the courses I had was writing a white paper. And it was a forced collaboration situation, which really, I will tell you, you learn a lot. You learn how other people work and how you work differently. And it's not wrong. It's just different. So yeah, take everything that you can that interests you while you're in the program, because you'll absolutely use it.
That's great advice. I couldn't agree more. It's been my experience. Everything you just said has been my experience and more as well. And those group assignments, they're not in every single class, but they are in some of them. And they are scary at first if you're somebody who is an independent thinker and worker. That's who I am too. I mean, in marketing, I'm the only one who does this, podcasting and video production. And so I kind of work within my own sphere, and I like that. So it was really challenging to have those group assignments. But you know what? That's the real world, isn't it? I mean, even in my job, I do have projects that I work with other people. And to learn how to work with other people, there is a science behind it. There is. Yeah,
not just so I used to be in management. This is different. It's more about collaboration. And trust me, in this field, you will be collaborating a lot, whether you see that now or not. It's all about collaboration and partnerships. Mm-hmm. Tackle those classes that challenge you to work with other people, because you will definitely benefit from it.
And the greatest thing about graduate school is the fact that it is and I don't want to say a playground, meaning like it's silly, but it is a safe playground for you to be able to test out these types of skills that you want to build. It's a safe environment. So if you're not used to working with people and that scares the heck out of you, it's a great opportunity to be able to get out of your comfort zone and learn how to do it. And then the rewards, I haven't had all the group assignments I had, they were all positive. And, you have a few moments where you're like, oh, am I living up to the standard? Is somebody else not? And you know what, at the end of the day, everybody is there because we're all high caliber. We want to succeed. Some of us are investing a lot of time, and there's a lot of sacrifice for some people with work-life balance and graduate school. So nobody's there to waste anybody's time. And that's the thing that I learned, is that we're all in it wanting the same thing. We want to succeed at the end of the day. And ultimately in this field, we want to be able to help people learn. What's better than that?
I can't think of anything.
Now, I always like to end these podcast episodes with some professional development type of questions, just to give our listeners some food for thought, maybe a book or a quote that inspires you. So do you have a favorite book that is your go-to that you really enjoyed reading and has helped you develop?
Oh, goodness. I love books in general. I am a voracious reader. So I read, thankfully now, a lot for pleasure. But my favorite book, as it relates to professional development, I got to say that the Chuck Hodell's book, ISD from the Ground Up, is really spectacular. Sometimes it lives on my shelf in my office, and sometimes I pull it back out when I'm kind of stuck with an objective or something that, that I need to refresh my memory on, from that systems perspective. But there are so many. I'll tell you what I'm reading right now. I'm reading an Everyone Culture right now. It's kind of an OD change management book. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what's fueling me at the moment.
I love it. That's awesome. That's great. Do you have a favorite quote?
Oh, I absolutely have a favorite quote. I'm known for having stickies all over the place with quotes, but my favorite is, if your dreams don't scare you, you aren't dreaming big enough.
Yeah, that is very powerful. I love that. Love it, love it, love it. My husband, he likes to work with wood, and he made me this sign, and it's a quote. And so I look at it every day because it hangs in my office, and it's like, do one thing every day that scares you a little bit. It's kind of similar to that in a way. Yeah. And what is the greatest piece of advice that you've ever received?
look out for your quiet mentors. There's people that are mentoring you when they don't realize that they're mentoring you, and kind of absorb everything you can. I had a great one at UMBC that really helped me see that she saw me as something bigger than I saw me. You know, we get comfy where we are, and out there is kind of scary, but you know, these quiet mentors sometimes challenge you to think bigger than your current self.
That's powerful. I really like that, quiet mentor. And there are so many of them who we engage with in our everyday lives. You know, as the years roll by, you can think back to some of those pivotal moments in life. And it's those quiet mentors that help nudge you, or maybe put a seed in your mind, planted something in your mind that you didn't think about otherwise. It could be in the form of a book. It could be in the form of an actual person, or a video you saw, or a movie character. Yeah. There's so many quiet mentors in life. And it's really cool to stay open to that and be aware of it. Mm-hmm. Last question. What do you wish that you learned sooner in life?
Everything. I wish I had learned sooner that I was not too old to go back to school. I will tell you, I put my bachelor's on a shelf when I was a young person for career demands and things, and I kept telling myself I was too old to pick it back off the shelf and dust it off. And so at 42, I went back to school. I finished that bachelor's, and then I decided, you know, to go on for a master's. And so, you know, I'm now 53, and you're never too old to go back to school.
I love that so much, Melody, because we're the same age. I'm 53 as well, and I'll just be graduating in May. And I was 50 when I decided I had no thought about going back for my master's. And I worked at a higher education institution, but I just was like too busy. I was too busy. And then I'm like, I don't really need it. And then, you know what? It's the best decision I ever made. It really is. It really helps a person just grow and encourages you to keep learning. And you are right. There is no age to learning. No age whatsoever. Yep. As a matter of fact, I remember when I was an undergrad, there was an 80-year-old woman in my husband's undergrad program, 80 years old. She graduated with my husband with her undergraduate degree. And it's the sweetest thing in the world. She just kept on learning. And I thought, yeah, you know what? I want to be like that. Just keep learning.
It's awesome. It's yeah. And it's okay to be curious. You know, curiosity doesn't die when we're young. You know, no. Tap into your curiosity and figure out what's out there to learn.
I love it. Melody, this has been a wonderful conversation. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. And I hope our listeners, that you've gotten a lot of value out of this conversation. If you're thinking about this program, well, here you go. You heard it here. It's a great program. Keep learning. Thank you, Melody, for being on.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode. If you'd like to learn more about our offerings, do a search for UMBC graduate programs in Learning and Performance Technology, or scan the QR code on your screen if you are watching this in a video format.